In a democracy, how should a Christian confront things that are wrong? What is the Christian response to political issues around us? What is God's way? This is not the first time this question has been asked. You see, the great Christian campaigners down the ages had some important Christian principles which they held. They feared God more than man. They loved their neighbours. They spoke the truth. And they focused on their mission. Our own story starts back in 2005. The Sunday Times newspaper runs an article about a radical Islamic sect who are planning to build a mosque in West Ham in London, making it their global HQ, with a capacity of 10 times that of St Paul's Cathedral. Tablighi Jamaat, the separatist group behind the mosque, are hostile to non-Muslims and see other Muslims as religiously inferior. They see women as possessions and use their mosques as platforms for promotion of their ideology. You're a Christian. You live near it. You're sure it's wrong, but do you ignore it? Isn't it only nasty, racist people that oppose mosques? How can you avoid fighting the wrong way? But age-old Christian principles apply. They help us stand between two forces. It's not the do-nothingism of the politically correct or the hatred and despair of the far-right extremist. The Christian approach offers a more excellent way, and we will explore it together. Alan Craig, a Christian, did live near the proposed mosque, and he decided to set up the MegaMosqueNoThanks Campaign. The campaign was not perfect, but it's a story about how to apply Christian ideals to the fallen, messy world we live in. Fear God, not man. Having decided to stand up and oppose the mosque, things got harder as expected. The false accusations, name-calling, and even a death threat. But it turns out the most painful thing was attacks by his fellow Christians. And even his own supporters tried to pull him away from his vision. How do you avoid falling into despair or losing track of the plan? Can you be sure you're doing the right thing? How do you overcome fear of men? The way out is what people have always done. Go back to the call, the vision, the dream. What do you stand for? You'll need to be sure God would smile on your campaign. Wisdom always springs from fear of God. Right back on a winter morning in 2005, Alan faced the choice to do nothing or to act. A simple phone call from a senior church minister was a defining moment for Alan. It set in motion the idea that he had a moral obligation to act. Alan knew that God wanted him to stand up, to oppose the mosque, not out of hatred of Muslims, but instead to oppose what Tablighi Jamaat espouse and promote. This was the Christian thing to do. It's this confidence that God would be pleased that sustained him even when others wanted to take the vision somewhere else. Love your neighbour. In the heat of a campaign, personal attacks come from everywhere. On one occasion, a hostile young Muslim man set up a website making libelous claims and trying to link Alan to neo-fascist groups. This man lived in Alan's community. But Alan did the unusual thing, and to the man's surprise, Alan arrived at his doorstep unannounced for a cup of tea and a chat. But this was just the start. Alan sent him a card when the man's child was born. In fact, the goodwill started to go both ways. Rather than demonizing your opponents, the Christian way of love your neighbour is far more excellent. Of course, not everyone was willing to receive the right hand of friendship. The trustees of the mosque refused to meet. But respect for opponents and honouring their right to campaign was part of the DNA of Alan's campaign. After all, apart from God's grace, we too may be on the other side of the dividing line. This was never meant to be a Christian crusade against Muslims. Instead, it was to be gracious and civil, separating people from the ideology. Speak the truth. When you oppose something, the pressure to oversimplify may be tempting, but unless it's 100% true, it could undermine your point. Commentator Steve Emerson infamously claimed Birmingham was a no-go area for non-Muslims. His inaccuracy made him an international joke. It's an extreme example, but playing fast and loose with the facts in the rush to get the story out is dangerous. In contrast, the Christian campaigners researched their facts because Christians are people of the truth. Alan studied Tablighi Jamaat for 6 months before going public. He went where the facts led. You see, the FBI and French intelligence viewed Tablighi Jamaat as a terrorist recruiter. That claim can be bolstered by their known links with the Pakistani Taliban. It would have made powerful headlines from our side to call them a terrorist organization. The problem is, the truth is much more complex. While it would have furthered our campaign, it was not fully true. The end does not justify the means. We must be true at every step. Machiavelli may approve of cutting corners, but Christ would not. The facts led to something more subtle, harder to argue, but true. Tablighi Jamaat are not a terrorist organization, and they don't advocate terrorism. But they are Muslim separatists and isolationists, and terrorism has sometimes been a byproduct of their separatism. You see, in practice, what happened in Mindanao in the Philippines demonstrates dramatically the effect of Tablighi Jamaat's ideology. There used to be good local relations between the Catholics and Muslims. But what changed? Tablighi Jamaat appeared on the scene and actively promoted their hostility to Catholics, and social barriers grew up. Despite calls against this from local Muslim businessmen who had lost business as a result. The same isolating effect had happened in Dewsbury in the UK. If Alan had picked the wrong argument for the sake of a good headline, it would have undermined the Christian integrity of the campaign. If you can't back it up, don't say it. The greater and more controversial the claim, the greater the need for cast-iron facts and killer evidence. The facts are checked, the message is clear, but it needs to be communicated. When it comes to anything involving Islam, most of your hearers feel like strangers struggling to navigate an unusual world, unable to separate myths and reality. They will certainly be skeptical of any political outsiders. When the campaign started, even questioning Islamic groups was unorthodox, and many Christians refused to engage in any debate about Islam. If we had any hope of bringing anyone on side, we had to be attractive and friendly. Words and tone had to be picked carefully. The name of the campaign itself was chosen carefully. The far right might have chosen a brutal "Stop the Ruddy Mosque," but Alan and the team chose the more respectful "Mega Mosque No Thanks." We had to persuade based upon values common to all. You must make sense to people of any faith and none. Christian jargon was to be avoided, as it made little sense to most people. The truth had to get out. Press releases were sent, and local media was embraced, whatever they say about you. The local newspaper loved to mock Alan, and even laughably put his photo in upside down. They ran stories sympathetic to the mosque, without acknowledging the other side. But Alan had to fight on, holding them accountable to their journalistic duty to report both sides. On one occasion, the mosque architect bragged that it would be larger than Battersea Power Station. This was an open goal, so a full-sized advert was prepared to be placed in the local paper. The money was paid and it was all ready to go, but at the last minute, through fear, the paper refused to run it and refunded the money. Undeterred, the team pushed on and printed postcards for every house in the borough with a feedback form on the back. Knockbacks will come, but the story must get out. Leaflets, debates and videos went out, all facts and no spin. Little by little, people came on board. Not just Christians, but moderate Muslims, atheists and others. The ice was thawing, and it was becoming freer to engage in civil debate. Stay focused. Building good alliances with others is essential, but we must be shrewd, focusing on what is right for the campaign. Many wanted to widen the campaign. Alan even got invited to speak at a large pan-European anti-mosque event, but he refused. Staying focused and saying no kept his campaign message clear. He was not anti-mosques in general, he was anti this mosque. It was also a good tactic to keep the far right away. Staying on your vision and not getting distracted was the only way to get things done. Fear God more than man. Love your neighbour. Speak the truth. Stay focused.